You know how everyone's talking about AI, like being able to spot fake news? Well, it's not just sci-fi anymore.
Yeah.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into some research. It's about some really big AI models like Gemini, GPT-4, and Llama,
Oh, wow.
and how they like decide if a news source is, trustworthy or not.
That's fascinating. It's getting into some pretty cutting edge stuff there. And this research, I mean, goes beyond just saying reliable or unreliable. We actually get to see the AI's like thought
So
process.
we get to see the words and patterns they use
Exactly.
to like make their decisions. So cool.
Yeah. So they fed these AI models a ton of data, over 2,300 websites.
Oh,
And
wow.
then they compared the AI's judgment to human experts.
Like real people.
Yeah, real people at NewsGuard and Media Bias Fact Check.
Okay. Those are some pretty reputable organizations, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got really rigorous methodologies for evaluating, all these different news sources, looking at like factual reporting, transparency, bias, all that kind of
Oh.
stuff.
So the AI is basically going up against the pros. What happened? Did the AI do well?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. The AI models were really good at spotting those like clearly unreliable sources,
Okay.
sometimes even better than the human.
Really?
But when it came to the reliable sources,
Mm-hmm.
it got a bit more nuanced.
So it's easier to spot the fakes than to like really understand what makes a source trustworthy.
It seems that way, yeah. Fake news often has these like really easily detectable patterns.
Like what?
Oh, sensational headlines, emotional language, not really citing credible sources, things like that.
Right. AI is really good at spotting patterns?
Right.
But what about those cases where it's not so obvious? Like maybe a website has some good info, but also like does some things that are questionable.
Yeah, that's where it gets interesting. The AI models showed some limitations there, and that's where this research gets even more interesting. They dug deeper by having the AI explain its judgments using keywords.
Oh, okay. So we get to see inside the AI's process.
Yeah, exactly.
What kind of keywords did they use?
So for the reliable sources,
Yeah.
they often use terms like factual reporting, neutral language, and local news.
Huh. Local news. So maybe the AI thinks local news is more reliable.
It's possible, yeah. It could be because local news often focuses on like community issues
Makes sense.
and stays away from those super polarized national debates.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. Okay, that's really interesting. And what about the unreliable sources? What kind of words did the AI use for those?
Not surprisingly, words like sensationalism, conspiracy, bias came up a lot.
Okay.
Oh, and they also found that specific names like Trump or Biden popped up a lot more with the unreliable sources.
Hmm. So the AI is picking up on like the same stuff that media experts warn us about.
Right?
Clickbait headlines, strong opinions,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
all those hot button
Yeah.
topics. Okay, that's kind of fascinating.
But it also, it makes you wonder about how AI models are trained, whether they're inheriting the same biases that we see in, the real world.
Hmm. Okay, so even though AI can be really helpful for spotting fake news, it's like not a perfect solution.
Right. And they didn't stop there. They wanted to know if the AI was really, thinking or just kind of spitting out what it had memorized.
Okay.
So they designed this experiment where they gave the AI tools to do its own research.
Wait, so the AI was like doing its own research. What does that even look like?
So they gave it access to a few things.
Yeah.
It could scrape content directly from web pages,
Okay.
conduct web searches, and even get help from other AI models to, help analyze the text.
So it's like the AI got promoted from intern to actual detective.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
could go out and look for clues, like to decide if a website was reliable or not.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's starting to get closer to how we as humans evaluate news.
Right.
We don't just go with our gut. We actually look for evidence.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so what did they find when they gave the AI all this freedom to investigate? Anything surprising?
Yeah, well, one thing that stood out was that both Gemini and GPT, the AI models,
Mm-hmm.
they really focused on transparency as a big factor for judging reliability.
So, like, if a news source is open about its biases and where it gets its info and things like that, the AI sees that as a good sign.
Right.
Huh. Almost like the AI is looking for, like, accountability.
That's a good way to think about it. It shows that transparency isn't just, some ideal that journalists talk about, but something that AI can actually learn to recognize and value.
Yeah. And this goes back to those keywords we talked about earlier, like factual reporting, neutral language. It
Exactly.
seems like the AI is picking up on those like core principles of good journalism.
Absolutely. But they also found that these AI agents were much more likely to do a deeper investigation when they came across those red flags we were talking about earlier.
Hmm.
Sensationalism, bias, all that.
So it's like the AI is developing its own sense of like skepticism,
Yeah.
learning to be wary of those sources that show those warning signs.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting. Imagine an AI that can not only spot those red flags, but then like actively investigates them to figure out what's really going on.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. It's almost like we're training a whole army of digital detectives to like fight fake news.
It is a powerful idea,
Yeah,
but it also, it does raise some important questions about, how we use AI responsibly and ethically.
right, right. We don't want AI to be the one deciding what's true and what's not, you know. We still need humans in the loop.
Absolutely. It's all about finding the right balance.
Hmm. Okay, well, this is already so much to think about. I'm really curious to hear more about, what all this means for the future of news and information.
Well, that's a great segue into the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we've seen that AI can be pretty good at spotting fake news, especially when we're talking about those like obvious signs, right? Sensationalism, bias, things like that.
Wow.
But where does that leave, us humans in all this? Like, do we even need to worry about fake news anymore if AI can just, take care of it?
Well, that's a really good question, and it's actually something the researchers thought about too.
Okay.
They wanted to know, like, how much info does the AI actually need to make these judgments? So
Hmm.
they started stripping away stuff from those news websites.
Like what kind of stuff?
Headlines,
Yeah.
the articles themselves, the layout of the website.
So like all the visual stuff, just giving the AI like bare bones text.
Exactly. They wanted to see, can the AI still tell if a website's reliable just based on the words themselves?
Okay.
And then they took it even further.
Oh no. What did they do?
They gave the AI nothing but the website's URL.
Wait, hold on. So you're telling me the AI could look at something like, www.whatever.com
Yeah.
and tell if that website's reliable?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that even with that tiny bit of info, the AI's judgments were still pretty much in line with what the human experts said.
That's kind of freaky. So is that like a sign that the AI is like super intelligent, or is there like something else going on?
It's a good question. It really gets at how these AI models like actually work.
Yeah.
It could be that they're using this huge knowledge base they built up during training.
Oh, okay.
So maybe it's learned to connect certain domain names or even like website structures with reliability.
So like it knows that if a website ends in .gov, it's probably more trustworthy than one that ends in, I don't know, .info.
.info. Yeah,
Or
exactly.
maybe it's even picking up on subtler stuff,
Look at what?
like how long the domain name is, the keywords they use,
Uh-huh.
or even like the whole structure of the URL.
So even though it seems like the AI is making these judgments out of thin air,
Right.
it's really drawing on like a ton of information and patterns it's learned, over time. Exactly. But it also makes you think, like,
Yeah.
are these AI models actually analyzing things in real time?
Uh-huh.
Or are they just relying on these, pre-existing connections and patterns they've already learned?
That's a good point. It's like the difference between someone who actually does their research versus someone who just goes with their gut feeling.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. And to really figure this out, the researchers took their experiment to the next level. They created what they called an agentic workflow.
Agentic workflow. Okay, you're going to have to like explain that one. What does that even mean?
So imagine you give the AI some tools and instructions, and then you just watch how it uses them to make a decision.
Okay.
It's kind of like turning the AI into an investigator,
Yeah.
giving it the power to actually go out and find information instead of just, passively processing what it's given.
So we're not just feeding the AI information anymore. We're giving it the ability to like go out and find its own info, almost like follow its own leads.
That's a great way to think about it, yeah.
Yeah.
They basically gave the AI three main tools.
Okay.
It could scrape content from websites,
Huh?
it could do web searches to gather more info,
Okay.
and it could even ask another AI for help with analyzing text.
Wait, hold on. They let the AI ask another AI for help. Isn't that like cheating?
Not really.
Yeah.
It's more like a collaboration, right? Even human experts, like we talk to our colleagues, we get second opinions.
true.
In this case, the AI was able to use the knowledge of another AI to get a better understanding of what it was looking at.
Okay, that makes sense. But how did they like keep track of what the AI was doing with all these tools? It's not like we can just, look over its shoulder.
Well, they were clever about it. They designed the experiment so that the AI had to document every step it took.
Oh, okay.
It's like giving the AI a digital notepad and saying, show your work.
So the AI had to like write down every website it visited, every search it made,
Exactly.
even like the questions it asked the other AI.
Yeah, it had to keep a record of its whole thought process so the researchers could follow along.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So what did they find out from all this detective work?
One of the most interesting things they found was that these AI agents, they kept coming back to certain criteria when they were trying to decide if a source was reliable.
Okay.
And one of the biggest ones was transparency.
So being upfront about your biases and where your information comes from, that's a good sign for the AI.
It seems so, yeah. It's
Yeah.
almost like the AI is looking for signs that the website is, accountable for what it publishes.
That's interesting. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before with those keywords.
Right.
Factual reporting, neutral language. It's almost like AI is learning what good journalism looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But there's another interesting thing they found. These AI agents, they were way more likely to do like a really deep investigation
Oh, okay.
when they came across those red flags we talked about earlier.
Like sensationalism, bias, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not just that the AI can spot those things,
Uh-huh.
it's also that it knows to be more suspicious when it sees them.
It's like it's learning to be a better skeptic.
Yeah. It's developing its own sense of, hey, wait a minute. This might not be right. I need to look into this further.
That's actually like kind of cool. So the AI isn't just accepting information at face value, it's learning to question it, to dig deeper.
Exactly. And that's where things get really exciting. Imagine an AI that can not only spot those red flags, but also like actively investigate them, really dig into the claims and figure out the truth behind them.
That's pretty amazing, but also a little bit, I don't know, scary. Like, what if the AI gets it wrong?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. It's one
Yeah.
of the big challenges with using AI in this way.
Right.
We need to be really careful about how we train these systems, how we make sure they're being used ethically and responsibly.
Right, right. It's not as simple as just letting the AI run wild and make all the decisions for us.
Definitely not.
Mm.
It's all about finding the right balance,
Yeah.
using AI to help us, but still keeping humans in the loop.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, this is already a lot to think about, but I'm really curious to hear more about, where we go from here. What are the next steps in all this? How can we actually use these findings in the real world?
Well, that's a perfect question to lead us into the next part of our discussion.
Okay, so we've talked about how AI analyzes websites like for reliability and even how it can be like a digital detective going out and investigating those red flags. But now I'm like really curious about the big picture here. How can all this research actually be, used in the real world?
That's the question everyone's asking, right?
Yes.
And it's one that a lot of researchers are working on right now.
Yep.
One really promising idea is using AI as like an early warning system for misinformation.
So like a digital smoke detector for fake news.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Imagine AI that could constantly be scanning the web and social media,
Yeah.
flagging potential misinformation before it even has a chance to spread.
Wow, that would be huge.
Right.
Especially with how fast, false information can go viral these days.
Incredible, yeah.
But how would that even work?
Well, based on what we've seen in this research, AI could be trained to spot those same telltale signs of misinformation that we talked about.
Okay.
Sensational headlines, emotional language, lack of credible sources, all that.
Right, right.
And then they could flag those articles or posts for, further review,
Okay.
either by human fact checkers or, even more advanced AI that could really dig into those claims.
So it's like we'd have this whole army of like digital detectives constantly on the lookout for fake news.
That's the idea, yeah.
That's pretty amazing, but it also like makes you think about the ethical side of things, right? Like we don't want AI to have like too much power over what we see and read online.
That's a really important point. We definitely don't want AI to become like the ultimate judge of what's true and what's not. That's not the goal here.
Right, right.
And that's why, human oversight is going to be absolutely crucial in any system like this.
Yeah.
AI can be a great tool for spotting those early warning signs.
Uh-huh.
But in the end, it's got to be humans who make the final call about what's trustworthy and what's not.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
It's a good reminder that even as AI gets more advanced, those human skills like judgment and critical thinking
Right.
They're still essential.
More important than ever, really.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not about replacing humans with AI. It's more about like using AI to help us do our jobs better.
Exactly. Using it to like enhance our own ability
Right,
and to
yeah.
navigate this, this really complex world of information.
Right, right. Well, this has been such an interesting deep dive. We've
Yeah.
gone from, understanding how AI analyzes websites to like imagining how it could help fight misinformation on a global scale. It's a lot to take in.
It is. It is. As we wrap up here, is there like one key takeaway you'd want our listeners to remember from this conversation?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to remember is that AI isn't some, magic solution to the problem of misinformation.
Okay.
It's a powerful tool for sure, but it's only as good as the data it's trained on
Uh-huh.
and the humans who are guiding its development.
Right. So it's not about just like blindly trusting AI to tell us what to believe.
Exactly.
It's about, using AI as a tool to help us be more critical thinkers, to help us make smarter decisions about the information that's out there.
Exactly. It's a responsibility we all share, especially now with, everything being online.
Right. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through all of this research.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into AI and news credibility.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Remember, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep questioning the information you see online.
Good advice.
That's all the time we have for today's episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.